Ever feel like you're just drowning in information?
Hmm.
News feeds, research papers, even just casual conversations. It's constant.
It really is a deluge, isn't it?
Yeah. But what if you could not just consume it, but actually master it? Learn to cut through all that noise and spot the hidden logic. Or maybe the lack of logic.
Hmm.
The punk band Bad Religion, they had this line, there's an inner logic and we're taught to stay far from it.
Ah, yeah, I remember that. Apt.
Right. So today, we're going to try and defy that, this deep dive. Think of it as your shortcut to becoming truly well-informed, giving you the tools to analyze, well, any information you come across.
Exactly. A headline, a policy brief.
Or just what your friend is trying to convince you of over coffee.
Precisely. Our mission here is really to equip you with a pragmatic guide for developing sharp critical thinking and analytical skills.
And it's not some dry academic thing.
No, far from it. It's not that sterile logic you might picture. It's really about recognizing that reasoning, analysis, these are always communicative acts. Always.
Great. And the benefits.
Oh, they're huge, practically speaking. You'll understand information as it relates to your own work, figure out what's really relevant to what you need, and maybe most importantly,
Yeah.
know exactly when you need to dig deeper, when you just don't have enough information yet to solve a problem or make a call.
So let's start right at the beginning then. We hear these phrases all the time. Think critically, analyze, be logical, all the time.
But what do they really mean? Do we actually, know the techniques, the things that help us do it better?
We absolutely can. Look, smart thinking isn't some magic talent you're just born with.
Right?
It's a set of skills, definable skills anyone can cultivate. It means knowing how to work out and express your main ideas clearly,
Okay.
and then planning how to communicate those ideas so they actually land with whoever you're talking to.
Makes sense.
It means checking you've covered the important angles of your topic.
Yeah.
Building a framework where your facts, your evidence, they genuinely make sense together.
Right. Providing that structure. Yes. And here's the clincher. It's about presenting your ideas by linking them in a way that really convinces people of your conclusion.
So thinking isn't separate from communicating.
Not at all. It's integrated. Finding information, analyzing it, communicating it. That whole process starts even before you decide what to read or write about.
Huh.
We all reason every single day. Smart thinking is just about making those analytical processes explicit, becoming aware of them so you can, do them better.
Okay, let's unpack that then. You mentioned communication. Every time we argue or explain something, we're using language.
Fundamental tool.
Right. So what are the subtle levels at play there, the things we might miss?
Well, I think it helps to see 4 distinct levels. They kind of build on each other.
Okay, level 1.
First, you've got words, just the basic units, right? Like student or reasoning.
Sure.
Now, words carry meanings, and often more than one. There's the denotative, meaning the explicit dictionary definition, what it literally points to. But then there's the connotative meaning, the subtle, sometimes hidden feelings or associations that word brings up.
The emotional baggage, sort of.
Exactly. And understanding that is crucial. It helps you spot when someone might be trying to, subtly influence you, even with seemingly neutral words.
Like calling a policy a reform versus a cut.
Precisely. Same basic fact, totally different connotation, different feeling. Think government subsidy versus handout. Same money changing hands.
Gotcha. Okay, so words. What's level 2?
Level 2 is a statement. This is just words put together. Pretty simple. For instance, there are several hundred students who have studied smart thinking at Curtin University. That's a statement.
Right.
But what's interesting here is that one single sentence can actually contain multiple statements.
Wow.
Take the sentence. We use reasoning every day of our lives, but most of us have no formal training. And the more practice and the more training, the better we will be at it. That one sentence, it actually holds 3 distinct statements. 1, we use reasoning daily. 2, most lack formal training. 3, more training improves reasoning.
Huh. So one sentence, 3 points? I never really thought about it that way.
Right. So just because you write one sentence doesn't mean you're only making 1 point. It's something to watch out for in your own writing and when reading others.
Okay. Words, statements. What's next?
Then we get to claims. Claims are statements about the world that can actually be judged true or false. This is where the analysis really starts to bite.
True, false. Okay.
And claims have these crucial properties. One is scope. Scope basically refers to how much or how many.
Give me an example.
Okay, compare these. All Australians think global terrorism threatens this country versus some Australians think global terrorism threatens this country.
Their difference.
Huge. Or even a few Australians think global terrorism threatens this country. The scope shifts dramatically with just one word.
And scope isn't just numbers.
No, exactly. It can be geographic area, like most of Western Australia is uninhabited, or it can be about time. For much of its history, Australia was not populated by white people. Being precise with scope is key, so your claims aren't misleading.
Right. Avoid overgeneralizing.
Precisely. Another property of claims is certainty. This tells you the likelihood or probability of something being true or happening.
Okay. Like how sure we are.
Yeah. For example, there is a high probability that Australia will suffer a major terrorist attack in the next decade. That sounds very different from...
There is some chance.
Right. Or even, there is virtually no chance.
Yeah.
Understanding how to signal scope and certainty properly. Absolutely vital for effective reasoning and clear writing. Otherwise, you're just making vague assertions.
Okay, scope and certainty makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other types of claims?
Yes, we also have value claims. These state whether something is good or bad, right or wrong. They can be explicit, fatty foods are bad for you, clear value judgment.
Sure.
But they can also be implicit. They might look descriptive, but they still contain a judgment.
How does that work?
Take the statement. Regular cow's milk contains fat. Now, on its own, that's descriptive. But in our society today, there's often an implicit suggestion that fat is bad.
Ah, so the context adds the value judgment?
Exactly. Judging these often depends heavily on context and the underlying assumptions about what's considered good or bad.
Which leads us nicely to the fourth level.
Which is assumptions. These are the ideas or values we just take for granted. We don't question them.
The unspoken rules.
Pretty much. Assumptions are a huge part of context. They're the hidden background rules. To be smart thinkers, we have to actively recognize the assumptions floating around, including our own.
That's the hard part sometimes.
It really is. We need to see how they silently influence every argument, every explanation. Reasoning relies on this background of implicit connections in our minds, often without us even realizing it.
So uncovering them is like finding the secret levers.
That's a great way to put it, finding the levers behind the curtain.
Okay, so we have these building blocks. But how do they connect? You mentioned linking earlier.
Right. So while claims are what we can actually see or hear in language, the linking the reasoning process itself is largely inferred. We don't always state how A leads to B.
So how do we spot it?
We find evidence of it in signal, words, or phrases. These show how one claim relates to another. Think of words like because, therefore, so, consequently, this means that. They flag the reasoning step.
Got it. And this leads us to this idea of analytical structure, which you said is different from just telling a story, the narrative flow.
Yes, very different.
So how does making our thinking explicit, making that structure visible, actually help us? It sounds a bit like detective work.
It absolutely is. And it helps hugely through a process called casting.
Casting.
Yeah, casting. It's how we sort of recover the underlying analytical structure from an argument that's just presented as a narrative, like a story.
You could walk me through it.
Imagine someone says, look, let's consider the facts. Chemical factories are very dangerous to live nearby, right? And one has just been built near your house. Now, you'd be crazy to put yourself in danger, wouldn't you? That's why you should move. Go live somewhere else.
Okay. Sounds like a typical argument someone might make.
Right. So to cast this, first, you'd underline the signal words, like that's why. That signals a conclusion.
Okay.
Second, you identify and mark the individual claims. Maybe put them in parentheses and number them. So, chemical factories are very dangerous to live nearby. Claim 1. And 1 has been built near your house. Claim 2. Then, you'd be crazy to put yourself in danger. Claim 3. And finally, the conclusion signaled by that's why you should move and live somewhere else. Claim 4.
Okay, so you've broken it down into numbered claims.
Exactly. Third, you diagram how they relate. You always put the main conclusion, claim 4, here at the bottom. The premises lead down to it. So claims 1, 2, and 3 would all point to claim 4, showing they are the reasons given for moving.
Ah, I see. It visualizes the logic.
Precisely. And this isn't just some academic exercise. It's like your superpower for quickly dissecting any argument you encounter, a news article, a sales pitch, even a family debate.
To see if it actually holds water.
Exactly. Or if it's just a slick narrative. Casting forces you to look at the bones of the argument, not just the nice story wrapped around it. It's a tool to improve your own analytical skills. It's not always an exact science, but it's incredibly revealing.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. When we look at these structures, these diagrams, we see premises can play different roles, right? Dependent, independent, implied. This feels like we're really getting into the engine room of an argument now.
It really is the engine.
Oh, yeah.
Let's start with dependent premises. These are premises that have to work together to form one single reason.
They need each other.
Yes, they don't individually support the conclusion on their own. Think of them like the legs of a chair.
Okay.
One leg alone won't hold you up, right?
Yeah.
All the legs need to work together for the chair to stand. With dependent premises, if you knock out just one, the whole reason collapses.
Got it. Example.
Okay, take the argument that university education should be free for all Australians.
Right.
This conclusion might be supported by several dependent claims working together. Like, premise A well-educated population is more productive. Premise B, higher productivity benefits the national economy. Premise C, if something significantly benefits the economy, the government should encourage it by funding it.
So A, B, and C together make the case for free uni.
Exactly. None of them alone gets you there. Now, in chains like this, you often find what's called a framing premise.
A framing premise.
Yeah, it usually acts like a general rule or principle. It shows how the specific details of the other premises actually connect to the conclusion. In that example, premise C is the framing premise. If something benefits the economy, the government should fund it. It provides the general principle connecting productivity to government funding.
Okay, that makes sense. So those are dependent premises. What about independent ones?
Independent premises are different. Each one offers a separate reason for believing the conclusion.
Like multiple chairs, you said earlier.
Exactly. Using that analogy, you can take one chair away and the other two still stand on their own, providing their own support.
So the argument doesn't collapse if one premise is weak.
Right. However, arguments relying solely on independent premises are often weaker or less insightful. Sometimes what look like independent premises are actually just parts of a more complex dependent reason that hasn't been fully unpacked.
Okay. So dependent are usually deeper.
Often, yes. Then we have the really tricky ones. Implied premises.
The ones that aren't actually stated.
Correct. They are analytically necessary for the argument to work, but they're left unsaid, usually because they're based on assumptions the speaker thinks are obvious or shared.
Okay, this sounds important. Example.
Imagine a computer technician tells a customer, "Your computer isn't working well because it only has 256 megabytes of RAM."
Sure.
That reasoning only works, it's only effective, if the customer shares the implied premise that modern programs need, say, at least 512 megabytes of RAM to run well.
If the customer has no idea how much RAM is needed, the explanation falls flat.
Totally flat. You know, it reminds me of that time our home speaker just announced, "Your lights are off," and I thought, well, duh. But its implied premise was, and you want them on right now.
Huh. Right. It assumed your intention.
Exactly. And that's what happens with implied premises and arguments. Being aware of them is crucial, both for communicating effectively, making sure your audience shares your assumptions, and for judging the truth of your own reasoning. Am I relying on an assumption that might not be true, or that others don't accept?
You don't share the hidden assumption. The argument just doesn't connect.
It simply won't land.
Okay. So having the structure right,
Yeah.
understanding the types of premises, it's essential. But it's not enough on its own, is it? The quality, the foundation of the claims themselves, that seems paramount.
Absolutely paramount. You can build a beautiful logical frame, but if the claims you're using are flimsy or untrue, the whole thing collapses.
So what makes for strong claims?
Well, first, claims must be well-formed, meaning you use clear, precise language. Sometimes you might even need to sacrifice a bit of, narrative flow or elegance for the sake of absolute clarity. Get rid of the fuzziness. Nail it down.
Explicit.
Exactly. Second, claims must be well-founded. Every claim you make, whether it's your final conclusion or one of your premises supporting it, needs some kind of foundation, some reason to be believed.
And how do we provide that foundation?
Well, often this leads to an appeal to authority.
Oh, citing experts.
Right. Citing a competent, respected expert like, say, historian John Rickard when you're discussing Australian history can genuinely support a claim you're making. It lends weight.
But isn't appealing to authority sometimes seen as a fallacy?
That's a great point. It's crucial to differentiate. Using an authority as support for one of your own substantive claims is generally fine if they are a genuine expert on that specific point. The fallacy comes in if the person isn't really an expert or if you treat their word as infallible proof. We also need to distinguish between citing an expert to support our point versus analyzing the expert's own argument.
Okay, so how do we know when to trust an authority?
Good question. You check their credentials, look for potential biases, see if other experts in the field generally agree with them on this point. It's not blind acceptance, it's informed reliance.
Got it. So well-formed, well-founded. What else?
Relevance. This is critical. Your premises must be clearly relevant to the conclusion you're drawing.
Seems obvious, but maybe it's not always.
It's surprisingly easy to go off on a tangent. Remember that framing premise we talked about?
Yeah, the general principle.
That often helps establish relevance. For example, if your conclusion is about university quality, a framing premise like, overseas students generally seek to study at high-quality universities, can make a premise about overseas student numbers relevant to your conclusion. It explicitly draws the connection.
If it doesn't clearly connect, it's just noise.
Just noise. Wasted words. Then there's the burden of proof.
Right. Who has to do the heavy lifting in the argument?
Exactly. It's a contextual idea. Who has the more demanding job of proving their point? Often, conclusions that align with existing widely accepted views require less evidence to be persuasive.
Whereas if you're arguing something new or controversial,
You've got a much higher burden of proof. You need stronger, more compelling support. The challenge is often figuring out where that burden actually lies in any specific debate.
Okay. What else makes reasoning effective?
A really key aspect is justifying all aspects of the conclusion. Conclusions aren't simple things usually. They tie together ideas, scope, certainty, values, all that stuff we talked about earlier. Your premises collectively have to address every single aspect of that conclusion.
Can you give an example of that? It sounds complex.
Sure. Let's say your complex conclusion is, most people do not understand that late capitalism will never sustain unemployment levels lower than 5%.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
Right. To properly justify that conclusion, your premises need to provide reasons for why you say most people. What you mean by late capitalism, why you specify 5%, what sustain implies in this context, and what kind of unemployment you're talking about, e.g., official figures, underemployment.
Wow. So you have to back up every single piece of it.
Every piece. It's like a checklist for making sure your argument is thorough and doesn't leave gaps.
That makes sense. What about the overall structure?
Two more things here. Breadth and depth. For complex issues, your reasoning needs breadth. This means providing multiple, distinct lines of reasoning.
Different angles.
Yeah. Think about arguments for increasing immigration. You might argue for it based on economic benefits, that's one reason. But you could also add reasons based on cultural enrichment or fulfilling international obligations or even long-term defense capabilities.
So multiple independent lines of support.
Exactly. Breadth makes your argument more robust and allows you to appeal to different audience interests or concerns.
And depth.
Depth is about taking your reasons and expanding them. Don't just state a reason. Develop it into a comprehensive chain of dependent premises. Unpack those hidden assumptions we discussed. Show the detailed steps in your thinking.
So breadth is having multiple reasons. Depth is fully developing each reason.
You got it. Depth shows true mastery of the subject.
Okay, so we've covered structure, claims, premises.
Yeah.
What does this all mean for the practical ways we actually do reasoning in the real world? It feels like there must be common patterns or types.
There are, and they often overlap in practice, but it's useful to distinguish them. Think of these as maybe 5 key flavors or tools in your smart thinking toolbox.
Right, let's hear them. Tool number 1.
Causal reasoning. This is all about establishing cause and effect. What led to what?
The classic why.
Exactly. A standard example. Cigarette smoking is the most significant cause of lung cancer. Why? Because almost all sufferers were exposed to smoke, and few show other obvious causes.
Okay. Any pitfalls here?
Oh, the big one is correlation versus causation. Always avoid assuming that just because B happened after A must have caused B. Proximity in time doesn't automatically mean causation. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, as they say.
Right. Don't jump to conclusions.
Okay.
Flavor number 2.
Reasoning from generalization. Here, you draw a general conclusion based on specific examples or cases.
Like surveys.
Surveys are a perfect example. If a well-conducted survey of, say, 1,000 diverse Australians shows 70% favor becoming a republic, you might generalize and conclude that most Australians likely support this change.
The key being well-conducted and diverse.
Absolutely. The strength depends entirely on how representative your specific cases are of the larger group you're generalizing about.
Okay. Third type.
Reasoning from specific cases. This is kind of the opposite of generalization. You apply a general rule to a specific instance.
Deductive reasoning.
Often, yes. For example, general rule. People under 18 in Australia cannot vote. Specific case. I am under 18. Conclusion. Therefore, I cannot vote.
Seems straightforward.
Usually it is, but you need to be sure the general rule you're applying is actually valid and truly applies without exception to your specific case.
Got it. Number 4.
Reasoning from analogy. This is where you draw a conclusion about one case by comparing it to another similar case.
Finding parallels.
Exactly. But the absolute key here is relevant similarities. An analogy is only as strong as the relevance of the similarities.
Example of a good one.
Well, say you know your pet rabbit thrives on carrots. Rabbits and guinea pigs have pretty similar digestive systems in relevant ways, so you might reasonably infer your new guinea pig can probably eat carrots too. That's a helpful analogy based on relevant biological similarity.
Okay, and a bad one.
The classic example. Shaving cream is clearly similar in color, texture, moistness, and body to whipped cream. Whipped cream is delicious on fruit salad, therefore shaving cream must be delicious on fruit salad.
Chuckles. Right. Definitely don't try that.
Please don't. The two creams are similar in some ways, sure, but not in the relevant respect, namely edibility and taste. This is where analogies often fall apart. The similarities have to be relevant to the conclusion you're drawing.
Crucial point. Okay, and the 5th flavor.
Finally, reasoning from terms, which is essentially reasoning by definition. You propose or clarify a specific definition for a term and then draw conclusions based on that definition.
Laying out the ground rules for a word.
Pretty much. For instance, you might define cigarette smoke exposure very precisely to include both active smoking and passive inhalation from other smoke. Then, based on that specific definition, you might state that research shows no qualitative difference in the negative health effects, regardless of how the exposure occurred according to your definition.
So you establish a particular meaning first.
Yes, you nail down the definition, often to expand or clarify a concept, and then use that definition to build further arguments or draw specific conclusions.
5 useful tools: causal, generalization, specific cases, analogy, and definition. Got it. Now, how does all this tie into research? People often see research as just finding facts.
Right, but it's so much more. As the source material puts it beautifully, knowledge and reasoning are part and parcel of one another. Research isn't just digging up facts, it's a deeply analytical process. It's about thinking through connections, building arguments, asking the right questions.
And I bet the most important thinking move in research is that constant questioning, right?
Absolutely. Constant questioning is the engine.
So what kinds of questions should we be asking to make sure our research is genuinely smart?
Well, questions are essential because they help you define the dimensions of your topic right from the start. What exactly should I consider here? What bodies of knowledge are relevant? What specific definitions should I use? What methods are appropriate for this question?
You're basically asking why this topic framed in this way.
Exactly. Why am I looking at it through this lens, using these ideas, and not some other approach? You always need to be ready to justify your topic choice and its parameters, because the questions you ask fundamentally shape the answers you find.
Okay. And what about evaluating the information we find?
A key skill is understanding information by its source. Where did it come from? The context of its creation. Was it an academic paper for a conference, a peer-reviewed journal article, a popular magazine piece, a blog post?
That context gives clues.
Huge clues about its likely reliability and directness. Academic work, for instance, is generally considered more sound on factual matters because it typically goes through institutionalized scrutiny, peer review by other experts.
That doesn't mean popular sources are useless.
Not at all. It depends entirely on your question. A popular source, say, a TV documentary critiquing advertising techniques, might be a fantastic direct source if your research question is about popular views on advertising. Even if its commentary isn't perhaps academically rigorous, it directly reflects or shapes those popular views.
So its usefulness depends on what you're trying to find out. Don't just dismiss it because it's popular.
Precisely. If you want to know what people think, you need to look at what people consume.
Okay. And how do we connect different pieces of information?
This is where relating information to other information comes in, and our reasoning types are the guide.
How so?
Well, take similarity and difference. If you find data showing internet use doubled in Australia last year, you'd immediately start comparing. How does that compare to previous years? How does it compare to adoption rates of other technologies, like VCRs or mobile phones back in the day? Are there patterns?
Looking for context through comparison.
Yes, and actively look for contradictory findings. If one study says X and another says Y about the same topic, that conflict is often where the most interesting insights lie. Don't shy away from it. Dig into why they differ.
Okay, and cause and effect.
Use cause and effect thinking to probe deeper. If you observe that online communities often see initial enthusiasm followed by a decline in participation.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Right. Don't just note the pattern. Ask what causes this. Is it simply the novelty wearing off? Is it something about the online platform itself? Or maybe it's a lack of shared activities or goals outside the online space. The reasoning types become your framework for formulating deeper research questions.
So, in essence, when we research smartly, what are we gathering?
You're basically gathering four main kinds of information. 1, general contextual understanding the big picture. 2, other people's opinions and conclusions, especially those considered experts. 3, basic facts and evidence you can use to build your own premises. And 4, the underlying values and attitudes related to your investigation.
Context, opinions, facts, and values.
That covers most of it.
This all sounds like it requires a certain mindset.
It really does. The core attitude for smart thinking isn't just about following a method rigidly, it's more about having a keenness to think things through. That genuine intellectual curiosity, that drive to go beyond the surface level.
And that keenness, that curiosity, leads us back to understanding that context is all important for effective reasoning. You mentioned that three-way relationship: author, audience, knowledge.
Yes, that triangle is crucial.
Knowledge isn't just facts floating out there. It's something we create together, shaped by who's talking, who's listening, and what we all assume.
Exactly right. Knowledge itself is fundamentally intersubjective. Meaning it's created between people, intersubject. It's deeply influenced by the language we use with all its connotations and by the shared cultural and social assumptions we often don't even notice.
Can you illustrate that? How different assumptions clash?
Sure. Let's take a challenging example from the source material. Imagine Western public health experts trying to discuss preventing unprotected sex with, say, leaders from a very conservative Islamic community.
Okay, potentially tricky situation.
Very. The Western expert, operating from a context of social freedom and individualism, might naturally suggest public advertising campaigns promoting condom use. Makes sense in their framework. But the Islamic leaders, operating from a different framework with strong assumptions about premarital sex being forbidden, about community morality, and the role of elders, might see that same suggestion as deeply offensive as promoting vice or undermining traditional values.
So neither side is necessarily being irrational.
Not within their own context. Both approaches might be perfectly rational given their different underlying assumptions and values, but without explicitly acknowledging and trying to understand those different contexts, they're almost guaranteed to misunderstand each other, maybe even become hostile.
Context is everything.
It really is, which is why when you're planning your own reasoning, your own arguments or explanations, you absolutely must ask yourself some crucial analytical questions.
About my own thinking.
Yes. Start with your own reasoning. Why am I actually doing this piece of reasoning? What's my purpose? For whom am I reasoning? What does my intended audience expect, assume, or already know? In what situation is this reasoning happening? What are the requirements, the constraints, the format? And according to what methods, definitions, or broad understandings am I operating? What framework am I implicitly using? And finally, what specifically is expected of me in this task or situation? These questions help you define your own context and purpose clearly.
Right, setting the stage for yourself. What about the argument itself?
Then you need analytical questions about your conclusion. What is my exact conclusion? Have I stated it clearly? Is it well-formed? What specific kinds of evidence will I need to actually support this conclusion? And importantly, is my conclusion actually about an event or a decision in the world? Or is it about how other people think or write about something? That's a key distinction.
Okay. And the premises, the support.
Yes, analytical questions for your premises. For each premise, ask, why should my audience accept this? Is it common knowledge? Do I need evidence? Do I need to cite an authority? What is the function of this premise in my argument? Is it providing evidence, offering a definition, acting as a framing premise?
And the implied ones.
Crucially, are there any important implied premises lurking here that I need to make explicit? Either for clarity or because my audience might not share that assumption, bringing them into the open is vital.
This structured questioning seems really powerful for planning.
It is. And that's the primary advantage of using that analytical structure format we talked about the diagramming when you're planning. It forces you to make those logical links between premises and conclusion absolutely explicit.
Unlike just brainstorming or writing a narrative draft.
Exactly. Unstructured mind maps or just writing prose can hide weak links or missing steps. The analytical structure format puts the logic front and center, making it much easier to see if your argument actually hangs together before you invest time in writing it all out beautifully. It forces you to consciously connect the dots.
Which is the heart of smart thinking.
That's it.
Wow. I'm definitely thinking differently now. I'm already trying to cast our conversation. What a journey we've taken.
We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, from the absolute basics, the atoms of thought words, claims, through how we link ideas, the different types of premises, the types of reasoning, effective research, right up to planning your own arguments meticulously. It really changes how you approach information.
And the power you now have, hopefully, is immense. This deep dive, it's aimed to give you the tools to consciously control your analytical processes.
Not just be passive consumers.
Exactly. To find information, yes, but then to shape it, analyze it, and use it purposefully for yourself. Remember, knowledge isn't just a list of facts. It's best understood as this vast network of interrelated claims.
Expressed through arguments and explanations.
Precisely. And you now have the tools, the map and compass, to navigate that network much more effectively.
So here's a final thought for everyone listening. The next time you're presented with a conclusion that seems perfectly obvious, how will you start to cast it? What hidden links, what implied assumptions might you uncover if you look just a little bit closer?